2022 is proving to be a very tense year. As of now, the war in Ukraine began in February and shows no signs of ending in the foreseeable future. The economic repercussions of the Russian invasion are ongoing, and many nations are concerned that the lack of Ukrainian wheat will cause famine in their countries. The Israelis and Palestinians in Gaza have launched missiles at one another. The United States killed al-Qaeda leader and co-founder Ayman al-Zawahiri. But perhaps most ominously of all, the People's Republic of China has been conducting military exercises which have grown daily in size and have encroached on air and sea space around the island of Taiwan to a greater degree than ever before. These actions are a direct response by China to the visit of U.S. Speaker of the House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi on August 2nd to 3rd. Welcome to Binge History. If you like topics of current interest, please like and subscribe to our channel for more. For the People's Liberation Armies, which includes the Chinese Air Force and Navy actions, the government of leader Xi Jinping has been ratcheting up the pressure on Taiwan for much of the past year. Even before Pelosi's visit, the Taiwanese military tracked record numbers of Chinese incursions into what has unofficially been recognized as Taiwanese airspace for years. The increasing number of incursions and the significant buildup of the Chinese military across the Taiwan Strait were the reasons for the speaker's visit in the first place. Nancy Pelosi is no friend to the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. Representing a district that includes many people of Chinese descent, Pelosi has been an outspoken critic of the CCP's human rights record for many years, most notably on a visit to Beijing in 1991 to investigate the deaths at the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. Clips of this visit have been shown in the United States, China, and Taiwan in recent days, each government using the clip to illustrate its viewpoint of the current crisis. This is not the first Taiwan-China crisis. There have been 3 serious others and a constant level of tension since the nationalists in China fled to the island after losing the Chinese Civil War to the communists. The first 2 crises involved the shelling of other nationalist-held islands off the Chinese coast that only ended when the United States alluded to the possibility of a nuclear strike. This was in the 1950s when the US was, in many ways, the world's only superpower. In the mid-1990s, another U.S. House Speaker, Newt Gingrich, visited Taiwan during a time of particular tension between the island and the mainland. This crisis was resolved after the One China policy was affirmed by the United States, along with their policy of strategic ambiguity. The One China policy has been the agreed-upon solution to tensions between China and Taiwan, China, and much of the world. Most nations have openly agreed that Taiwan is, and always has been, part of China. However, another name for the One China policy is One Country, Two Systems, for the Taiwanese have enjoyed a free market economy since 1949. In contrast, the economy of China is, to a large degree, still centrally controlled. Nations seen by China as moving away from the One China policy are frequently warned that any recognition of Taiwan as separate from China could result in political, diplomatic, economic, and military consequences. Speaker Pelosi's visit to China was discouraged by the American Joint Chiefs of Staff and President Biden, who said that her visit wouldn't be helpful at the present time. Then, using quite hostile rhetoric, the Chinese replied that, should the speaker visit, the United States would be playing with fire. Tensions have been high for the past year when Chinese planes and ships have flown or sailed past the Taiwan Strait median line, which, though unofficial, is an artificial boundary halfway between Taiwan and China. These incursions have increased, and the reason given by the speaker for her visit was to assure Taiwan that the United States has their back, as she said in one of her speeches there. When China issued the statement about playing with fire, it likely increased the likelihood of Pelosi's visit. Even some of her most implacable Republican enemies applauded her visit and commented, "China does not get to tell the Speaker of the House where she can and cannot go." The Chinese reaction also amazingly showed a fundamental lack of understanding, not only of the American character, but of the US political system. The Speaker of the House is third in line for the presidency and is the chief officer of the US Congress. For her to back down from China's words would cause a massive loss of honor and trust for the United States. People in the US would say that Pelosi and her democratically President Biden backed down from China, which would destroy their chances not only in the coming elections, but the US position vis-a-vis Taiwan, which has been a close friend since 1949. Many in the US would also accuse Pelosi and the administration of being more than glad to help white European Ukraine, but not Asian Taiwan. China is also experiencing difficulties. For Xi Jinping to allow Pelosi's visit to go unanswered would deal a considerable blow to him at a crucial time, which in a way has nothing to do with Taiwan at all. Xi has been China's strongest leader since Mao Zedong, and in 2018, the two-term limit put on the premiership was lifted. This means that Xi could be elected to a third term in the important Party Congress coming up soon. Many believe that Xi will ask the party to appoint him for life. This is likely as he controls the police and the army, but a setback over Taiwan could damage his chances. China has some serious difficulties at the moment, though very few in the USA are talking about it. There are constant COVID lockdowns, China's economy was slowing before the pandemic, and much of its export manufacturing business is going overseas, for Chinese prices have increased progressively. Additionally, a vast real estate bubble is about to burst, and one of the biggest real estate firms in China, Evergrande, has gone bankrupt. People are still assessing the damage this has done and might do to the Chinese economy. Even though China has become much stronger militarily, an excess amount of money has gone towards making the PLA not just a regional force, but a world power, which has affected domestic spending to a degree. To show any weakness in the face of Pelosi's visit might have been political suicide for Xi Jinping. It should be said that in November 1950, the United States ignored many fiery warnings from China regarding American progress in Korea during the war there. Many Americans believed those statements to be just bluster Mao needed to utter to keep political support. They were wrong, and nearly 500,000 Chinese attacked US forces that had advanced to the China-North Korean border. Days before Pelosi's visit, the Chinese began moving additional forces to the Chinese coast nearest Taiwan. These include ground, air, naval, and missile troops. After her visit, the Chinese announced massive military exercises and published a map of the area where live-fire maneuvers would happen. Some of these designated places were located east of Taiwan and overlapped the Taiwanese declared Air Defense Zone, ADZ. On the third day of the exercises, the Japanese government announced that Chinese missiles had landed in the sea in its zone of economic interest, another way of saying Japanese territory. The exercises were planned for 3 days. On August 10th, Taiwan reported 17 Chinese fighter plane incursions into its ADZ. Many Taiwanese fighter planes were scrambled to shadow the Chinese fighters, the first time a serious challenge was posed to the Chinese exercises. A few days ago, in response to what it called an overreaction by the Chinese to Pelosi's visit, the United States announced that it would continue what it calls Freedom of the Seas exercises and sail a U.S. carrier task force through the Taiwan Strait, though at an unannounced date. One of the concerns in the United States is that China has already effected a blockade of Taiwan. It has naval and air forces on all sides of the island. Should they declare a blockade, the United States has two choices, and perhaps a third. One, it can run the blockade, or try to. This could easily lead to a battle at sea between two nuclear superpowers. Two, it can do nothing except make pronouncements about the illegality of the blockade, which China will ignore. Third, it can suggest talks between the two nations, which would be seen by the Chinese as the US bowing to Chinese pressure. Many ideas have been put forward in both countries' media and social media. On the right, Chinese and US conservatives preach a "do not give 1 inch" policy. Chinese leftist voices are silent, for the Chinese media is tightly controlled. Surprisingly, much of the American left agrees with the right and supports Taiwanese independence from China, though they are careful not to call it that because of the unique One China policy. Some in China and elsewhere, meaning Russia, ideas have been put forth that the US is hoping for Taiwanese independence as it wants to control the massive Taiwanese production of essential microchips, though they know this likely means war. But of course, if there's a war, it will destroy Taiwan's ability to make anything, so this is a misguided idea. China, Russia, and some non-aligned nations have also suggested that the US is deliberately trying to bait the Chinese into attacking Taiwan so that it might then interfere and call China the aggressor or make money selling weapons like in Ukraine. This, too, is strange since the US has given, to date, $10 billion in aid to Ukraine and realistically has no hope or desire to be paid back. The Chinese don't want a war with the United States, but they may get one if both sides are not careful. Before Pelosi's visit, Biden and Xi had a 2-hour conference call to examine each other's position. Hopefully, they discussed the steps that are being played out now so there would be no miscalculation by either side. Still, the cutting off of communications by China of communication between the Chinese and American militaries is concerning. One observation that those in the know might be making: China did not begin its exercise until after Pelosi left, most likely knowing that interfering with the visit of such a high official and the security and military around her would lead to grave consequences. This might be a positive, indicating that while China is serious about Taiwan being part of China, for the moment, it only wants two things: for the world to acknowledge that yet one more time, and for the US and others to recognize its growing power.